Hello and welcome. If you're managing a liver condition, questions about what you should and shouldn't eat are probably a big part of your life. So when I saw a recent study pop up about something as simple as an orange, I knew we had to break it down. Let's dive into the science together and see what it really says.
So here it is, the big question. Could a simple daily orange actually be a tool to help manage fatty liver disease? It's a tempting idea, right? When you're constantly thinking about your diet, finding something simple, natural, and accessible that could make a real difference, well, that would be a game changer. And that's exactly what researchers wanted to find out.
But hang on, before we can really get into what the study found, we need to make sure we're all on the same page. We're just going to quickly cover a couple of basics about the condition itself and how our bodies handle certain fats. It'll make the results make a whole lot more sense, I promise.
Okay, so the condition we're talking about here is called MASLD. Now, you might actually know it by its old name, which was NAFLD. It's a condition where fat starts to build up in the liver, and it's all tied into our metabolism. The most important thing to remember is that right now, lifestyle and diet are the absolute best tools we have for managing it. And that's why a study like this is so interesting.
All right, let's talk about cholesterol for a second. We hear the word and we usually think bad, but it's not that simple. You've got HDL, which is the good cholesterol. Think of it like your body's cleanup crew. It goes around and gets rid of the extra gunk. And then you have LDL, the bad kind. That's the stuff that can build up and, clog the pipes. Keeping these two in balance is super important, and you'll see in a minute why these were the exact things researchers were keeping an eye on. So, now that we've got the background, let's get to the fun part. How in the world did scientists actually test this idea about oranges? Well, they set up a pretty straightforward experiment that ran for 4 weeks to see if they could spot any real measurable changes. Here's how it worked. First, they found 60 people who were already diagnosed with MASLD. Then they split them into 2 groups. For 4 weeks, the first group had to eat 400 grams of Navalina oranges every single day. The other group, the control group, just went about their lives and ate no oranges. And at the end of the 4 weeks, they took blood samples from everybody and compared the results to see if anything had changed. Pretty simple, right? And that brings us to the results. Now, I'm deliberately using the word clues here, because like a lot of early scientific research, what they found wasn't some huge dramatic breakthrough. It was more like a collection of really interesting hints pointing in a certain direction. Here it is, the main conclusion, pulled straight from the study itself. It says that eating oranges was associated with modest, non-significant changes. Now, that word non-significant, that's a really important word in science. It doesn't just mean small. It means that the changes they saw were so small that they could have just been due to random chance, not necessarily because of the oranges.
Let's just put that in plain English to be perfectly clear. When the scientists crunched all the numbers, they could not say for sure that eating oranges made a real statistical difference compared to not eating them. That is the official scientific takeaway from this particular study.
Okay, but, and this is a big but, this is where things get really interesting. Even though it wasn't statistically significant, just look at the direction things were moving in the orange eating group. There was a trend towards lower total cholesterol, lower bad LDL, and higher good HDL. They even saw a little dip in a marker for inflammation. So while it's not proof, and I have to stress that, it's a consistently positive pattern. It's a signal that tells scientists, hey, maybe there's something here worth looking into more. So after all that science, all those stats, where does that leave us? Let's circle all the way back to our original question. What does this actually mean for you, for your health, and for what you put on your plate every day? Let's translate this into a practical, no-nonsense takeaway. Okay, here's the bottom line on how to think about this. First, this is very, very early research. It absolutely does not prove that oranges are some kind of magic treatment for MASLD. What it does is give scientists a little clue, an idea for something they might want to study more in a bigger, longer trial down the road. For you, the takeaway is simple. Oranges are, of course, a healthy food to include as part of a balanced diet. But, and this is the most important part, any specific diet plan for managing your health has to be discussed with your doctor, always. And really, that brings us to the final thought here. This study didn't hand us a miracle cure. What it did was reinforce that our diet matters and that science is a slow, careful process of collecting clues one by one. So while the researchers go back to the lab to look for more answers, the power is still right here with you. So the real question this study leaves us with isn't, should I eat more oranges, but instead, what's one positive healthy choice that I can make for myself, for my liver, today?